real alcoholic. My name's Keith. By God's grace, Alcoholics Anonymous, rooms full of people like you, and a fast backfield. It hadn't been necessary for me to take a drink or do no dope since May the 11th, 1976, and for that I'm forever grateful. My home group is the Dog on a Roof. That's a men's stag in Fullerton, California. If you don't have a home group, you ought to get one so you'll have a good feeling about yourself, because I got a purpose, and it's to be from there and to support that meeting. I want to thank David for inviting us to come. It's a special thing. I'd like to give a special thanks for Mr. Vanoy. He was very kind to me, and it's a special feeling just to be here and to be sober. Just to be sober. That's what the hell it's all about. Just to be sober. For a guy like me to be sober today is the greatest gift of all. And I looked for it all my life, and I came to a place like this and I found it. I got it right now. Right now is all I got. This second, this minute, the now. I get to feel that feeling right now. And that's the best deal in town. It's the last house on the block. That's what I look for all my life. I get a lot of special benefits. I get to sit there and listen to my wife share. And I got a special feeling of forgiveness. A feeling of forgiveness of me, and being able to sit there and feeling that she's had forgiveness of herself. And I love that. I love that feeling. It's a special magic of Alcoholics Anonymous to be able to sit there and know that everything's right on schedule. It's not 1 minute too fast or 1 minute too slow. It's right here, right now. And God, that's a freedom. I look for that all my life. I drank alcohol until I achieved pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization, bought myself a bag of dope and a Harley Davidson, became a legend in my own mind. I know there's some legends here. I can feel them. I heard my story in Alcoholics Anonymous. I used to sit around, drink a little beer, and think maybe I ought to do something, you know. Then I'd smoke a little of that non-habit forming marijuana and kind of fantasize how I was going to do it. And then I'd shoot a little of that speed so I'd have the strength to do it. Then I'd snort a little of that coke so I'd be cool when I did it. Then I'd drink a little whiskey and forget what the hell it was I was going to do. I'm a real alcoholic. I don't identify as anybody who specializes. I'm a pig. I'd do anything, anytime, anywhere. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous wondering if there's anything left that I should have tried. There's a few combinations out there that I probably didn't get in me at the same time, but I didn't wonder about anything. I'm just an alcoholic, and I'm grateful for that. I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, and I don't know if that's a necessary qualification to make you an alcoholic, but it gave me a lot of the character defects, a big mouth and a large jug of whiskey, and I was something right away. I was something. Got me downtown. I love that. And I don't know, really no fight inside of me whether or not I was born an alcoholic, but I know this: when I took my first drink, an alcoholic was born. And it doesn't make any difference after that. My daddy's an alcoholic. It's a special feeling that I have today to be able to be here, and my old man's here. He's sober 8 years in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just my old man. I mean, that's all. I mean, that's the rigorous honesty about Alcoholics Anonymous. He and I were bitter enemies for many years. And we were drinking buddies and crime partners, and he was a lawyer, and I needed a lawyer. You know? But today he's just my old man. I got about 15 months of seniority on him, and I don't ever let him forget that. He called me up once and asked me if I'd be his sponsor, and I said, no, I'd rather be your spiritual advisor. But we got a special relationship. And a father and son, we can put our arms around each other and say, I love you. It has a meaning. It has a meaning. And I'm grateful for that. Will you stand up? I was going to protect his anonymity, but he doesn't protect mine, so. But as you heard before me, I'm an active drunk. Drinking's a contact sport for me. I like to do things and go places. I like to get it on. And I've been a lot of places and done a lot of things, and I'm grateful for that. I did all I could up there in the Texas Panhandle, and then I had to get the hell out. They call that a geographic in Alcoholics Anonymous, but at the time I left Texas, that was unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. And I went to California because the guy offered me on a job on a ranch 40 miles west of Long Beach, and I didn't have sense enough to know that was ocean. And I left the Texas-Oklahoma Panhandle to get out of the oil fields, and I went to California and went to work in the oil fields. Makes sense, you know. And when I got to California, I looked up a drunken uncle, and he found me a house to live in. Right next door to one of the best dope connections in that area, and a motorcycle gang lived right down the street. It was a fantastic place. Nobody on my side of the street mowed their yard. They didn't have one. And they all did the same things I did. And over on the other side of the street's where all the Christians live. You know, they had dichondra yards and fine clothes and good jobs and everything else. And it was just perfect for me. I didn't want to move my family around much. I wanted to plant them somewhere, and I wanted to get the hell out of there. And I tried, though. I tried. An alcoholic like me, you know, I can sit right across the street from those people that have got those clean houses and yards and kids and everything else, and I can fantasize that I'm just like them. I mean, I had a woman and a kid and a dog and a cat. I had a 120-pound German Shepherd dog that hated me. Had a cat. I took that cat down to the vet to get it fixed, and I forgot to get it declawed, and that cat hated me. Every time I lay down, that cat would attack me. And the dog would bark at me, and the kid would cry, and the old lady would yell at me all the time. I mean, all I ever wanted to do was come home and rest, you know? I did a lot of amphetamine. I was a speed freak. That's like going 150 miles an hour with your feet nailed to the floor, you know? You can carry on long conversations with no one, man. I mean, it makes the top of your teeth flat. But, man, you get a load of that in me and some Red Mountain wine, and I can carry on long conversations about nothing with no one. I heard a guy say, you know, you're just a walking encyclopedia of worthless information. And I'd go off and work, and I'd stay gone 5 or 6 weeks, and I'd come home, and it was always a traumatic experience for me to try to come home, because sometimes I'd overshoot the mark and go on to Vegas. You know what I mean? You do that occasionally. And I'd end up getting over there at the house, and then I'd get up in the driveway, and I'd have to make a decision. I'd have to make a decision whether I was going to go through the front door or whether I was going to go through the dog run. If you haven't cleaned the dog run out in 5 or 6 weeks, it's a chore to go through the dog run, I'll guarantee you, especially if the dog hates you. But it was a choice between me and the dog or me and her, you know. And I'd get up there to the front door, and I'd open that front door, and there she'd be. It's just like her mouth was attached to the doorknob. Man, I mean, there she was with this butcher knife trying to stab me. You know, that woman could talk. I'd stick a .38 in her mouth, and she could carry on this conversation, you know. You know, samurai warriors train all their life to get the last kill in. You know, they don't care if they die, but they want to kill their victim. Pre-Al-Anon knows that intuitively. They know that. Now, I've gone through lots of pain in my life, but there's no pain like the wrath of a pre-Al-Anon. If there's any brutality that got me to Alcoholics Anonymous, it's Al-Anon brutality, I guarantee you. Because I'd come home and she'd stand there, and she'd stick that knife right in my stomach. And I'd stick a gun right in her mouth, and she'd say, you go first. She had this philosophy that if I shot her, she'd go backwards, but she'd stick me with that knife on the way out. And I'd be arguing with her and raising hell with her, and the dog would be biting me in the ass, and the cat would be scratching me, and the kid would be screaming, and I'd be fighting it off, and I'm trying to say, Daddy's home, for Christ's sake. I've come a long way to mow the yard and clean up things around here. Finally, to get settled down along about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd come awake because I didn't sleep long. I mean, my blackouts were short. I didn't want to miss nothing. I'd wake right up. I'd have to go out in the kitchen and get my heart started. I'd take about 150 mini bennies, put them in a blender, put a little orange juice, a couple of raw eggs, a little something to get your heart started, pour me a big glass of vodka, hit it a couple of times with a little Tabasco so I could call it a Bloody Mary, drink this and drink that, and then I'd go out in the garage and try to find a lawnmower. Long about 5 o'clock in the morning when that stuff goes off 2 inches behind your belly button. If you can find the lawnmower but you can't find the rope, it's okay because you'll push start that sucker. And I'd get it out in the front yard, and I'd be mowing my front yard about 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have no muffler on my lawnmower because I wanted everybody in the neighborhood to know I was mowing my yard. I didn't have no grass catcher either. And it'd run a while and it'd die. And anything around my house that died, you shoot it, you know. If you can't kill it, lay down beside it and claim it. And I'd kill my lawnmower in the front yard, and then the cops would come, and it'd be about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And they'd be out in the front yard fighting with me, running my head into their nightstick. And then she'd come running out and say, don't take him away because he's got all kinds of things to do. And then they'd leave, and I'd go in the house, and that makes you depressed. It'd be about 6:30 in the morning, I'd have to go in there. I had an old chair, an old rocker I laid in. Just right, leaned just right. I could lay in there and suck on a bottle of wine. I had an old 97 Winchester shotgun sawed off, laid down beside there, and I'd get it out and I'd jack it back. And when the woman and the kid would walk by, I'd stick the barrel in my mouth and click it. It was empty, of course. I wanted them to know that I was sinking into a suicidal depression. As soon as the crowd got there, I was going to kill myself. One day I jacked it back and looked, something red went by, I noticed, and I thought, I wonder what that was. I pulled over so I can click the trigger, and it went off. She put a shell in that gun, man. Blew the air conditioner right out of the wall right behind me. Laying out there on the ground, flying around, run out. We're having a hell of a fight because it's July and the air conditioner's needed to cool the house down, and the cops come, and then I'd have to go out in the front yard, run my head into their nightstick, and then she'd come out and say, don't take him away because he's got all this stuff to do. And I'd say, for God's sake, take me away, you know. And then they'd take me back in the house, and I'd get in the house, and I'd think, I got to get the heck out of here. I got to leave. My car ain't running too good because I hit the curb when I come in. And I'd think, I got to get her car, her keys, her purse. And I'd sit in there and watch her. Now, that's bad. When two people are obsessed with each other, you don't watch each other real calmly. And I'd have to think, I'm going to have to sneak out of here, or I'm going to make a mad dash. And I'd make a mad dash, grab her purse, run out and get in her car, start it up, back out of the driveway, turn around and see if there's, be sure and run into the neighbor, and I'd look back, and there she'd be on the hood, beating on the window, man, just beating on the window. Now, that'll sober an old drunk up when you got a crazy woman on the hood beating on the window. And I have to pull back up in the driveway, drag her off, and the dog would be biting me in the ass, and the cat would be scratching me. And I think, I got to get the hell out of here, you know. And then they'd send them guys that have that funny sports coat that zips in the back, you know, and they'd put that coat on me out in the front. And all the cops would be over there, and then the dope fiend neighbors next door would come over and call the cops pigs. I said, don't call the cops pigs when they're beating on me, man. I mean, I don't do that. And then they'd take me down to the nut ward, and they'd set me in there, and they'd talk about my mother, and then I'd talk about their mother, you know. And that's good for about 48 more hours of observation. It just seemed like that's the way it was. And one time they had me down there, and I was all crazy, and they had me strapped down on one of those tables, and I'm screaming, screaming, screaming. I thought, I wonder why I'm screaming. And I stopped screaming. I listened just because everybody in the other rooms were screaming. I didn't want to be different. You know? They took me in this room, and there's about 6 psychiatrists in there, and said, we don't understand why it is you go so crazy. I said, I know what it is. I was in the big war. I was in this plane, and they had this parachute on me, and come time for me to jump, and I couldn't jump. I froze right in the door, and they shoved me right out this door, and I fell, I don't know, must have been 15, 20,000 feet. I don't know. My chute didn't open. I landed in this tree, and it flung me over here, and I hit on my head. And then these people come along and got me and drugged me over here, and then they throwed me in the back of a wagon and hauled me over to this place, and I was there I don't know how many days, and then my guys come along, and they got me, and they took me over to this place, and they put me in this hospital, and then they brought me home, and these doctors give me these little pills. And when I take these little pills and drink whiskey, I go crazy. And the psychiatrist said, just a minute, and he went and called her. He said, he's in the wrong hospital. He should be at the VA hospital. And she said, what the hell for? He's never in the service. You know? She's always blowing my coat. But they gave me a little card that said I was nuts. They put right on that card, he's crazy. And they said I could bring that card back and stick it in that little slot in the door anytime I wanted to, and let myself into that room that has no doorknobs on the inside, and I could save all kinds of ambulance rides and police calls and everything else. Just when I got crazy, just come down there and check myself in. I never did that. But it impressed the guys I was drinking with, I'll guarantee you. I could tell them, I'm crazy. I got a card to prove it. They started calling me crazy. Now, you can do that for a period of time, but you find yourself in strange places. And I found myself standing in front of a judge, and he was talking to me about going to the penitentiary for 3 to 5 years for something I didn't understand doing anymore. I remembered getting her pregnant. But she said I was at fault, and he said I was at fault, so I said, okay. And he said, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to sentence you to Alcoholics Anonymous for a little while. If you can stay sober, I might postpone that sentence. I went home, and there she was. And I said, I got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. She said, good. I've turned you into Al-Anon. And I laid down. Pretty soon here she come with that knife. Stuck it right in my face. Said, get up. We're going to that meeting. Went over to that meeting. She said, fat boy, if you come out of that door before 10 o'clock, I'm going to gut you. Now, you can keep an old drunk sober if you got a big knife and a crazy woman waiting on you. But I didn't hear nothing in that room. Because if you ain't really an alcoholic, and I mean really an alcoholic, and you're sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, you ain't really an alcoholic. I mean, I was a little bit. But an amazing thing happened. You know, the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous is we're powerless over alcohol and that our life is unmanageable. Now, I knew I was powerless over alcohol. I knew that. But an amazing thing happened going to one meeting a week for 4 months. At the end of 4 months, I was sitting in that house. That judge had let me off that deal, give me a little, parole, and I was sitting in the house, and that old dog's laying there. I pet that old dog. He'd smile at me. The cat was in my lap. I could pet that cat. Pet the kid. She's sitting right over there, just pretty. The old lady's in the kitchen, all fat and happy, and I'm back in the big bedroom. I thought, I've been too hard on myself. I've prematurely gone to Alcoholics Anonymous. I know. I know someday I'm going to end up over there with them old fools. I know, but I got some time left. An amazing thing about an alcoholic when his life's not unmanageable, people start to trust him, and next thing you know, she let me go to the meeting by myself. And I got drunk. Drunk jumped just right in my hand. I was in Dallas, Texas on business. I ordered a Virgin Mary because that's what I was drinking at the time, and it came with gin in it. And I drank it, nothing happened. I didn't stand up, take my clothes off, jump up and down and tear the place up or nothing. I had another one. Nothing happened. I thought, see there. And I started drinking. In the next 3.5 years, we're living screaming hell, and there's nothing cute or funny about that. I mean, I wish it was, but there's nothing cute or funny about this disease when it gets to that point. Because, you see, I didn't understand something. Fear had been my partner all my life. And I was a scared little boy that grew up to be a scared man. And I always said, all I really was an angry little boy that grew up to be an angry man. I said it's not the size of the fight, man in the fight, it's the size of the fight inside the man. And I didn't understand that. I remember one thing they said when I went to them AA meetings. They said, we won't guarantee you had your last drink, but we'll guarantee you'll never enjoy another one. And they weren't kidding. In the next 3.5 years, there's a lot of things happened. They call them the yets, I guess. But I know this. I know that I experienced the loneliness. I know I experienced the craving of a drink, and I experienced the feeling that it don't work anymore. And as it didn't work, I tried to make it work. And I know that the anger and the fear inside of me just drove me to the gates of insanity. And I sought Lord companionship, and I ran with a lot of people, and I did a lot of things. In the next 3.5 years, I was arrested 57 times for assault and battery and resisting arrest. And 31 of those times had to do with me beating my wife and my daughter, and I'm not proud of that. That's just the way it was. And I ran with people. I prospected in one of the most notorious motorcycle gangs on the face of this earth. And those were my people. You know, I heard a warden of prison say you can take everything away from a man or a human being. You can take wives, families, material things away from a human being, and they'll still be a human being. But when you remove their dignity, they got nothing left to lose, and they're as near an animal as you can be. And that's where I went. And in order to prove myself, it was necessary for me to beat another man to death with my bare hands. In order to prove myself and beat the deal. And I didn't understand that. And yet I'd wake up many times, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and a cold sweat, screaming, and jump right up out of that bed and look at my wife just to see if I beat her to death yet. Or maybe wake up like that and run down there the hall to that little girl's room and listen to see if she's breathing. Because it was just a matter of time till I was going to do that to them. And I didn't understand that. But it wasn't working for me. And I was just what I thought it was. You see, I had it confused. I had what I had confused with what I was. And I fought it with all the fight inside of a human being for survival, and it wasn't working. It didn't make any difference when I stood in front of that judge and he said, I don't understand one thing. I know when you run around with people like you run around with, and you live and you breathe and you act like animals, I understand one thing. That's the way you are. And I can understand it's survival. But what I don't understand is why you beat this man for 15 minutes after he was dead. How can you stand in front of another human being and say, it was me I was trying to kill. The wrong man died. I didn't know how to explain those things. I had no answers for that any more than I had the answers when people had sat in front of me and say, we love you. Why do you do this? I had no comprehension for love. It had no meaning. I was doing what I had to do, the way I had to do it. And I can remember standing in my kitchen, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm standing there looking at the wall. I got no place to go or nothing to do, but I'm standing in there and I look in that wall and I take a fifth of vodka and take a hit off that thing and I turn around and I look down the hallway. And down at the end of that hallway lived a little 9.5-year-old girl. And she had her chin on her chest and her hair was in her face and she had an old coat on. Had a rotten Easter egg had rolled around in there and she sat on it and it smashed back there. And she looked and smelled like she looked and smelled. And she had no friends. And she'd look at me. She didn't say, Daddy, what are you doing? Please don't do that today. Don't beat me and Mommy. She was looking to see which direction I was going so she could go the other direction. And I'd turn back around and take a drink out of that jug, and without a sound, she'd be gone. And I can remember morning, like one morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I'm standing in my bathroom, and I'm cooking up some of that stuff and slamming it in that syringe, and I turn around just for a second. The bathroom door is open about 6 or 8 inches, and there's a full-length mirror there. And I turn around, and this suitcase I'm walking around in is empty. And a little 9.5-year-old girl's looking through the crack in that door, and she's looking at me standing there with that outfit. And her eyes and my eyes caught just for a second. And there was nobody home. There was no love. There was no hate. There was nothingness. She didn't say, Daddy, what are you doing? Please don't beat me and Mommy today. She was looking to see which direction I was going so she could go the other direction. And I'd turn back around and hit that thing and look back, and without a sound, she'd be gone. That's just the way it was. Nobody had any place to go. Nobody had anything to do. I lived that way for at least a year and a half with nothing working. I know that's fantastic today, you see, because I know standing right here right now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it won't work. It won't work that long. If it would work that long, I wouldn't even be here. I had to do it until it wouldn't work and then do it some more so that I would know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm also the kind of a guy that as long as one man, woman, child, dog, or cat that'll come along and pick me up and pat me on the poo-poo and say, we'll fix you one more time, I won't look at me. I won't look at me. I could be sitting at a stoplight 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning in my old pickup truck, take a hit out of a bottle of vodka and look over and some guy'd be sitting there in the car. He'd be all dressed up because he's going to work. And he's looking at me with that look of contempt. And I'd take another hit out of that jug and I might turn around and say, what the hell are you looking at? I got to have that drink just to get to the next stoplight so I can get to the next stoplight. But I'm in the gutter looking down on him. The alcoholic ego is unbelievable. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful to us. I'm dying, and yet I'm looking down on a man that's responsible. I didn't understand that. And I had to drink and use till I couldn't do it no more. And I hid out. And I stayed drunk and gone for 100 days. My last drunk lasted 100 days, and I didn't have no friends. I run out of friends and enemies at the same time. And I'm grateful for that because I come crawling out of a motel room and I come back home one more time and they left. And I tried to die and I couldn't. And somehow, some way, through a grace of God and some people that cared for me and still believe, a little gray-headed man came to my house and knocked on the door, and I met him at the door. I didn't meet him at the door with all kinds of love and welcomed him into my life. I stuck a gun right in his face, and I said, if you take me back to a nut wart, I'll kill you and me and anybody else. And that little gray-headed man did something he'd never done before nor since. He reached in there and grabbed that gun and threw it on a couch, and he said, I want to tell you something. If you want to commit suicide, you got a crowd now, and I'll wait. But if you don't want to drink anymore, come go with me. And like a little child, I followed him into the other room, and I grabbed a hold of that man. He said, I'm going to tell you something. You can leave this room right here, right now, and never have to take another drink as long as you want to. You can do it. And he said, I'll add a little something to that. You never have to be lonely again as long as you live if you don't want to. Now, I didn't understand how in the heck you could go without a drink. I didn't even comprehend that. But I wanted that feeling. I didn't want that wind blowing through that hole in my gut no more. I couldn't stand it no more. I couldn't live and I couldn't die. I was crawling around in that house with the pitiful incomprehensible of a lip-dragging drunk. There wasn't nobody coming in my life saying, tell us another big story or tell us where you've been or the things that you've done. Nobody was coming into my life. And when that man said, you don't ever have to be lonely again, I believed him. And I followed him, and he took me to a detox. And they put me in there, and I stayed there for 30 days. And when they took me in that place, why, they took all my clothes off. They gave me one of those funny robes, you know, don't have no back in it. And they took my shorts off and everything and shoved me over there on one of them cold couches. And a weirdo come walking in there. I mean, he was all cleaned up. Had a big ring on and a big book. And he sat down next to me and he said something stupid like, are you an alcoholic? I said, I don't know what the hell I'd be doing here if I wasn't an alcoholic. He said, is your life unmanageable? And I says, I don't know. I don't have nothing to manage, you know what I mean? He said, are you crazy? And I said, yeah, I got a card over there I'd show you, but the nurse has got it locked up, you know. He said, you believe in God? And I said, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. He said, you know what an atheist is? And I said, no. He went and got a dictionary and looked it up. And he showed me the definition of an atheist, and I didn't even understand it. And he said, see there, you're running around saying you're something you don't even understand. Real smart, this guy, you know. He told me all kinds of things, like if I'd work these steps. He said, if you'll write an inventory. I said, write it down on paper? And he said, yeah, sign it and give it to somebody else. I said, all my lawyers have always told me, don't ever put nothing on paper. For God's sakes, don't sign it, and don't tell nobody. Now you're telling me I got to do that. He said, yeah. He said, if you'll do these simple things, you'll get the promises. And I thought, what's the promise? He said, well, the fear of people will leave you. I said, when? I got 2 contracts out on me. He said, the fear of people will leave you when you quit hanging around with people who are trying to kill you. I mean, that makes sense. He said, the fear of financial insecurity will leave you. I said, when will that happen? I owe everybody $1 and it's all due. He said, as soon as you make all your financial amends, why, you fear of financial insecurity will leave you. He told me he said, you will intuitively know how to do something which seemingly used to baffle you. I said, how will I know that? Everything baffles you. He said, a guy like you will have to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every day for the rest of your life. And he said, we'll let you do it for 22 years, and after 22 years you can come back and ask us, and maybe we'll let you have a night off to go to a movie, you know. He said, you will intuitively know how to go to a meeting every day. I said, you're so smart, will you be my sponsor? And he said he would, and I hung around there for another 20 days, and they let me out. They gave me a book, put me out. I went home. There she was, standing there at the house. I run right in the house. I said, I've got to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for the rest of my life, every day. What are you going to do? She said, oh, I've been going to Al-Anon. The kids have been going to Al-Team. The dog's been going to Al-Dog, and the cat's been going to Al-Cat. So we've already been doing it. I thought, I didn't know that. I went and called my sponsor. And I told him, I said, they've already been doing these things. And he said, don't say nothing, I'll come and get you. And he come and got me. And he'd take me to meetings. Take me to meetings all the time. I had to go ask some people if I could have a job. He said, you got to have a job. I went and asked him. I said, I need a job. And they said, we'll give you a job, but you'll have to do all the things that nobody else wants to do, and you'll have to go all the places that nobody else wants to go. I said, well, I'm willing to do that if you give me a job, and I did. And I started working all these places. They'd send me all kinds of places, like Big Springs, Texas, you know, down there in Snyder, Midland, Odessa, and Louisiana, and Canada. And I was running around everywhere talking to alcoholics. My sponsor gave me a directory and said, you look these people up. I went places. I called a guy up one time up in Canada. He came and got me. And we went over to this big building, sat down, and he set a coffee pot up, literature out on the table, and we sat down. About 8 o'clock, I said, when are they going to get here? And he said, they're here. I said, wait a minute. Just me and you? And he said, yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while, waiting on you, you know, and we had a hell of a meeting, you know. There's people that do that. I found them. You bet. And they told me I had to do an inventory. All these people kept talking to me about the steps. They told me I had to get on my knees. I said, I don't get on my knees unless there's a gun or a knife at the back of my head. They said, well, you want to stay sober, you got to get on your knees. And the guy told me, he said, a guy like you wears cowboy boots. Said, tonight you get it. Take your boots off, get down on your knees, shove them under the bed, and while you're down there, give him a little shot. And then in the morning, you get up, get down on your knees, get your boots out from under the bed, give him a little shot there. He said, call me in the morning and tell me if you've done it. Now, I liked everything except calling him in the morning and telling him I did it, but I did it. I was willing to do anything. And I don't even know where that willingness come from other than the fact I didn't want to go back where I come from. It didn't mean that I rushed right into Alcoholics Anonymous and got real spiritual and just, I was scared to death. I mean, all the things inside of me that protected me, even when I was using out there and I couldn't get no relief. At least I could say I'm loaded or trying to get loaded, and here I am sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nuts. I'd go in the back and radiate hate. I mean, you can sit down and two people come up and sit next to you, and they'll say, oh, I think we're going to go get a cup of coffee, and they don't come back, you know. I didn't quit carrying a gun just because I sobered up. I was full of fear and paranoia. I went to a meeting. My home meeting at that time was a men's stag in Anaheim, California, and I'd sit in that meeting. A guy would be talking about something he's doing that he shouldn't. I'd take my .38 out of my boot, take a bullet out, take a Pentel pen, write his name right on the bullet, and hold it up and say, I'm going to kill you right after the meeting. Put the bullet back in there. Pretty soon another guy would talk about he was stealing from the company or something. I'd take the bullet out, write his name right on there, and hold it up. I'm going to kill you right after the meeting. Put it back in there, and pretty soon they'd stand up and pray, and they'd hug me and say, keep coming back, and I'd forget which one of them was going to kill, you know. I'd say, well, next week I'll just come in and throw a grenade in here, you know. And they sent me off way up in Wyoming working. I had to go up to Evanston, Wyoming, go to meetings in the Evanston, Wyoming State Nut Ward, man. I mean, a guy like me, I was getting well, working these steps the best of my ability. And I come home one time, come running right in the house. I've been gone 4 or 5 weeks, and I come running in there. There she was. I said, get in the bedroom. I'm horny. She said, no, I've been going to Al-Anon, and I'm releasing you. I said, I don't understand that. She said, I went to Al-Anon and did an inventory, and you haven't made love to me in the last 10 years. You've raped me on a regular basis. And I thought, I don't understand that. She said, you're sleeping on the couch. I went and laid down on the couch about 12:30, 1 o'clock, while she come running down the hall. Said, them dope fiend neighbors over there are mowing their backyard. I said, the hell they are. I jumped straight up off the couch, run down the hall, grabbed a .44 Magnum, run out the back door, leaned over the fence, and blowed that hippie's lawnmower up. Blowed her all to pieces. She come running over there and throwed her arms around me and said, oh, Daddy, I just love you when you're a hero, and took me right in the bedroom and throwed one on me, man. I was single-handedly cleaning up a neighborhood that had been corrupt for a long time, man. I know that's crazy, but at a year and a half sober, that's the best I could do, going to meeting every day. I did an immoral inventory. I took it clear to Canada to share it with a guy, and I took it up there and I shared all my immoral inventory with him, and he kind of smiled when I got through, and he said, you know, if I could have done some of those things, I wouldn't have quit. He said, but you grew up on a farm, you got to quit kissing them cows on the lips, and you owe a minister, herd of sheep, and get back on down there and go to a meeting, and I did. And I felt real good about that. He said, I don't love you any less for that. And I kept going to them meetings. Now, about 3.5 years sober, I'm standing around that club. You get things if you stay sober. You get some material things. You're working, you're paying your debts. I had all kinds of financial amends to make, and I was paying them debts working. I got me a clean set of threads, and I stood in that club. My sponsor would take me down there and stand me over in the corner, and he'd say, see him? 3 years sober without a change of attitude. You know, I mean, a real example. Yeah. Some places they frisked me before they'd let me go to a meeting. I got me a big Lincoln, man, an AA car, park it right out in front of that club because I wanted the newcomers to have hope. And I'm standing in there one day all cleaned up, and I turn around and a weirdo standing right next to me. Hair going everywhere. Weird. Had a pair of pants on, hit him about his knees. Had a pair of thongs on, and he painted his feet black so it looked like he had socks on. I recognized that. I said, why don't you comb your hair? And he said, I did. I looked at him. He's a welder. Had hair out this way. He put that cap on, just stuck out like that. I said, what do you want? He said, will you be my sponsor? I said, geez. I said, I don't know. I got to ask my sponsor. And he was standing. I run over to my sponsor, and I said, see that weirdo over there? And he said, yeah. I said, he asked me to be his sponsor. And my sponsor says, yeah, I know. I sent him over there. He said, you go over there and tell him you'll be his sponsor. And you do what he says. So I went over to him, and he said, I said, my sponsor says I got to be your sponsor. What do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to go home. And I thought, well, you go through that door, and I'll go through this door, and you meet me out in my car. And he says, no, I want to go with you. And he grabbed right onto me. Now, 3 years sober, I only had 2 friends, and neither one of them was my sponsor. And I went by them, and there they are, just smiling, looking at us, you know, and they say, oh, it's going to be fun to watch you two grow. You know. We went out and got in that car, man. We're going down the road, and this guy starts talking to me weird stuff. He's telling me some real weird stuff. And we're going along pretty soon. He said, "Did you ever do anything like that?" Before I know it, I'm telling him my stuff. We're going right down the road, and I'm telling him my stuff. And he says, "Turn in here." And I pull in his house. He said, "Come back and get me at 8 o'clock. We need a meeting. You're sick." I thought, I'm his sponsor. I'm supposed to be telling him what to do. I go get him, man. We start going to meetings all the time. I'm taking this weirdo with me. He's talking to me. He'll be talking some stuff. Boy, it was bad, sick stuff. A couple times I had to lie because, I mean, you don't ever let your baby get one up on you. You know, I had to reach way down there and get some stuff and throw it on him. He said, he'd look at me every once in a while and said, "You ought to work the steps." I said, "I've worked the steps. I'm your sponsor. Don't tell me how to do that." We did that, I don't know how long, a month or so, and I sat in my house. We'd moved out of the old neighborhood, had a nice house, one of them houses where you don't let newcomers park their car in the driveway because they leak oil, you know. And I'm spiritual, sitting at my table Sunday morning reading a spiritual book. And I hear a knock at the door, and I go to the door, and there he is. Weirdest looking guy here, all tweaked out. One foot looks like it's in concrete, and the other looks like it's headed for Tijuana. Had an old book with paper stuck in it, and he said, "I want to work the steps." And I said, "Get in here before my neighbors see you, man," you know. He come in the house, and he went right in the kitchen, and he sat down at my table, and I said, "How do you want to work the steps?" And he said, "Like you did." And I thought, I don't know how to work them. He said, "We're going to work them this morning." And we talked about the first and second step, and then I told him, well, I had to get on my knees, and I had to say that prayer. And he got on his knees right there in my kitchen. He said, "Get down here." And I think, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be telling him what the hell to do, you know? He said, "Get down here." And I got down there, and I put my arm around him. He snuggled right up next to me. We got that book out and read the third step prayer, and he couldn't read all them words, and I said a few of the words. I felt a special feeling. Now, I'd done that with my sponsor, and but I never had a feeling like that. I mean, I was sitting around Alcoholics Anonymous. I was so dry, I was a fire hazard. And this guy was over there, and I was hugging on him, and I felt, I had a special feeling inside of me. Pretty soon the cat come by and stopped and looked at us, you know, and we were weird. And I thought, boy, if my wife sees me down here on my knees with this guy, she's going to know I've tripped out for sure. I said, "Let's get up." And we got up, sat down at the table, and he says, "Now I want to do a 4-step. And I said, "Well, I got you now. You got to have that 4-step done before you get to your sponsor's house." He says, "I can't write." And he throws this paper over in front of me and a pencil, and he says, "I'll talk, you write." And he started talking, I started writing. I wrote about an hour and a half. Pretty soon he said, "Did you ever do anything like that?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And I started telling him some of my stuff, and then I thought, you know, I forgot to tell my sponsor part of that stuff, and God's in here, and he can't read, so I just put some of my shit right in his. What the hell? I felt better, and so did he. Still do. We did that for 3 or 4 hours, man. Pretty soon he jumped straight up, run around that table, and kissed me right on the cheek, and throwed his arms around me and said, "I love you." I was like, oh, man, my wife hears that. He tore that stuff up and lit it on fire right there in the middle of my table and ran right out in the front yard and waved, said, "I love you," and away he went, man, down the road in his old car, you know. And I walked back in that house, and I had a special feeling I'd never had before. I never had that. You know, when I'd done my 5th step with my sponsor, I had a special feeling. I'd seen it happen in that house, because everything in this program, as you have seen and heard before me, there has not been one thing happen in this program as far as working that program that I initiated. You see, the alcoholic like me is so full of fear. I have no trust, no faith in God. I don't even know how to forgive myself. I'd be sitting around those meetings and people say, "Forgive yourself." And I'd say, "I don't know how." You see, I'm a murderer, I'm a liar, a cheat, thief, everything. It's like I got it tattooed across my forehead. I ain't nothing, I'm never going to be nothing. Every family's got to have a loser, and I'm yours. And people say, "Well, God can forgive you. Why can't you forgive you?" And I'd say, "Because I'm not God." I always had a smart answer, you know. And they'd say, "Well, keep coming back. We love you." And they'd hug me and hold on and just hold me tight. And yet that day when that guy come over to my house and told me his deepest, darkest secrets, when we sit there, two drunken bums talking to each other, talking about the special feelings of one alcoholic. You see, I got the experience for the first time in my life. Love. You see, love for a guy like me is an action. I don't understand the word. Love for a guy like me has to be some actions. There's 3 basic actions that I've been told about, and they apply to me. The first act of love is the act of transparency. Transparency. I must let you see in so that I can see out. Now, I'd done that with my sponsor, but it had only gone halfway around. It only made half circle. And that day when that ding-a-ling come over my house and he told me his deepest, darkest secrets, it made full circle. It's got to make full circle or you don't get it. You don't get it. And I found out what that meant. I found that out when that guy sitting in my kitchen and he talked to me about the lustful feelings he was having for his own daughter in sobriety and the guilt that he was having for those feelings. And he shared with me, and I shared with him, that I was so grateful that I was sober, that my own daughter had made the transition from a little girl to a woman, and I'm clean and sober, and I don't have to act on those thoughts. And he shared with me, he said, you know, I remember when my daughter crawled up in my lap, and she had a little flower she'd made out of paper, and she said, Daddy, I want to give you a flower that'll never die. And me and that ding-a-ling, we cried. We cried. Two drunken bums, two animals. We sit there and cried because we don't have to act on those thoughts anymore. And we shared those kind of secrets. And then he left. I let him leave. You see, that's the second greatest act of love. Apartness in our togetherness. I didn't understand that. Where I lived, people took hostages, man. And I let that guy walk out of my house, and he knew everything there was. I knew that. My sponsor knew that about me, but that was different. This guy, he told me his, and he walked out of my life, and I let him go, knowing that about me. You see, I'm as sober as I am secret. I got no secrets. Even the things that are secret to me, I don't even know. You'll know it before I do. And if I got no secrets, there is no gossip. There is no gossip if I have no secrets. And the greatest freedom of that is that if there is no gossip, it's not necessary for me to leave here today and have every one of your approval about me in order for me to feel good about me. I know I got that today. I know it. The reason I know it is because when I got up this morning real early, man, I saw them all around here. I've seen it all. The tall ones, the short ones, the rich ones, and the poor ones. I've seen them all. And from the second I woke up to this second right now, I've not seen one person or thought of anybody that I'd rather be than me. God, what a freedom. What a freedom that is. I got that today. I had freedom confused. For a guy like me, freedom is the third greatest act of love of all. I had freedom confused. I thought freedom was doing what you want to do it to whoever you want to do it to, anytime you want to do it. And that's not freedom at all. Freedom's having the strength to do what's necessary to be done when called upon. I didn't understand it. You see, I had it all confused. I had what I had confused with what I was. I thought I wanted to be the meanest man on the face of the earth. I knew how to do that. You get all the images, you get all the costumes, you can do that. You can do that. And yet I had to come here to find out what the meanest man on the face of the earth is. That guy lives down the street. He's got a little house, wife and a kid, dog or a cat, and he can get up in the morning and go in there and take a shower and put a clean set of threads on, and he can walk in the kitchen, put his arms around his wife and say, baby, I love you. You mean something to me. And he can walk across that room, and he don't have to kick the dog or the cat, and he can put his arms around his little girl and say, baby, I love you. I hope you can walk down the sunny side of the street today. And he can walk out the front door and get in his car, and he can go down the street, and he don't have to flip the crosswalk lady off. He can go to that job and work with them crap heads, and he can get his paycheck and bring it home, and he can put it in the bank, and he can sit down in the afternoon and take a nap. And he can get up and he can go to a place like this, and he can laugh and cry and kiss them goodbye. And he can come home at night and put his head on that pillow, and he can thank God for another day, a beautiful day. You see, it takes guts to do that. It takes real guts to be responsible. I didn't know how to be a husband or a father. I didn't know how to be an employee. I didn't know how to do those kind of things. They told me I had to be responsible, and I said, I don't even know what responsibility is. And they said, being responsible is the ability to respond. Get up off your ass and do it. And I said, okay, I'll try. I'll try it one day at a time. And I found out those things. I found out the true meaning. I found out the true feeling. I looked for those feelings all my life. And I heard a story about a little boy, and he lived on a farm. And one day him and his daddy were out there working on the farm, and a man come by, and the man wanted to put up a poster on the side of a barn. And the farmer says, okay, you can put the poster up on the side of the barn. And they put the poster up, and it was a poster of a circus. It had a beautiful picture of the lions and the tigers and all the animals and all the colorful costumes, and a little boy stood there in awe, and he looked at that poster on the side of that barn, and he said, I'd love to go to the circus. I'd love to go to that circus. And the father said, son, if you work all week, work hard, I'll give you the 50 cents it costs to go to that circus. Come Saturday morning, you can go to town and go to the circus. The little boy worked all week. He worked hard, and he looked at that poster, and with all of his enthusiasm, he couldn't wait till Saturday morning. Come Saturday morning, his daddy gave him a 50-cent piece, and he went to town, walked 5 miles to town. when he got to town. The circus was making a parade down through the center of town like they always do on their way down to the big top. And when they got down round by him, why, he's sitting there on the curb. And the last person in the parade was a clown. And when the clown came by the little boy, he tipped his hat. And the little boy flipped his 50-cent piece up in the clown's hat. And he got up and he walked 5 miles back home. And when he got home, his daddy said, "Son, did you see the circus?" And the little boy said, "Yeah, Daddy, I saw the circus." That's a sad story. I don't want to be a sad story. I want to get in the big top. I want to get down there and be with the people who are living, who are feeling the enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is God within. See, that's a special kind of feeling I look for all my life. I want to be able to do that. They told me I could do that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. They said, if you come in here and apply these principles to all your affairs the best of your ability, we'll guarantee you a life beyond your wildest drunken dreams. But you can't judge God's work. You're going to get to have a lot of good days. And there'll be a lot of good days. And you're going to get to enjoy them, and you're going to be able to stand out there in that street and be accounted for. And you better feel good about yourself, because there's going to be some bad days. And you better have something in the bank when the bad days come. Oh, I hate them bad days. Hey, because every time I have one of them bad days, fear is right there. Fear is my partner. It's been with me all my life. And I had some of them bad days not too long ago. And I had to take a look at me one more time. The alcoholic evil has the fantastic ability to revive itself irregardless of the length of sobriety. And I got myself right in there. And I didn't understand what was going on. You see, an alcoholic like me, no matter how hard I work this program, the best of my ability, and you heard a man share last night, the best of his ability. And I found myself with some back doors open. I left some back doors open because I'm a runner. And I don't like to be trapped. And I'm 9 years sober, and I found myself standing in places I didn't want to be, looking at people that I didn't want to see, because I left some of them back doors open. And I am so grateful, because the 7-step prayer says it will happen in God's time when you have the strength to go through these things. Not 1 second before. God will not give you more than you can handle. He gives the big loads to the big horses, and he gives the little loads to guys like Keith, you see. And I stood out there one more time, and those people checked me out. They called me in, and they said, "Here's where you come from, and here's what you've done. How can you account for this?" And with all the alcoholic ego, I stood there and said, "That's just the way it is," one more time. And people said, "It's great, but we can't tolerate you anymore." And I found myself walking down that road one more time, 9 years sober, walking down that road saying, "Why me? Why do I get this crap? For Christ's sake, give it to the newcomer. He deserves it." And yet I thought, no, I forgot where I come from. 9 years sober, I forgot where I come from. It's a long ways from the county jail to right here, I'll guarantee you. It's a long ways where I come from, just standing here today. I'm grateful for those things, because one more time I found myself in that position. One more time in my life I found myself in that position where I knew when I walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, everything had failed me. Everybody and everything but my God. My greatest reference point for that is when I asked for help unconditionally, when I cried out for help on May 11, 1976, is the first time in my entire life that I asked God to help me without any conditions. Without any conditions. Not, will you do this, I'll do that. It was just the bottom of the barrel, and I asked him to help me. And he did. Because it hadn't been necessary for me to take a drink or use nothing since that day. And yet I can find myself wandering around out there running my life. And it comes right back. And the thing that I had to check and see is, have I quit doing something in my program at 9 years sober? I had to sit down and do another inventory and go to my sponsor and say, what have I quit doing? What's wrong with me? He said, nothing's wrong with you. You're right on time. You'll get to close the doors on all these things one more time. You'll get to look back over your shoulder and see little by little. If you stay here and you do the best you can, you'll get to close those doors, and you'll get to develop a relationship with your God beyond your dreams, that you'll be able to develop a trust in another area of your life. And it was scary. At 9 years sober, I sat in my house for 30 days waiting on my lawyer to tell me whether I was going to do time in the penitentiary. Wreckage of the past. You got to get the hell on out. You can't live with it. You can't walk around here. It doesn't make any difference what you're doing in Alcoholics Anonymous if you're not applying these things to yourself the best of your ability. When that time comes and you got to take a look at yourself, and God will allow you to see what you need to see to change. I don't like change. I can get in here in Alcoholics Anonymous and I can put on my AA facade. But if I keep coming back, God will take it off. And He'll allow me to stand out there. God, I love them guys, man. There's been guys that come up and say, will you be my sponsor? They saved my life. Because many times I've had to tell them things that I've had to do. And the places I've had to go. And when it come my turn, they were watching me. You bet they're watching me. And they're saying, let's see if you got it. Let's see if you can apply these things. And God, I'm so grateful because I told them. All those hours after the meeting, all those days sitting around my house. And we talk Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm obsessed with Alcoholics Anonymous. I just switched one obsession to the other. And it's a fantastic obsession. Because many days I've got to sit in that house and talk to those guys. And when it come my turn to apply these things in my life, I had it there. I had something in the bank. And I got to let them see me hurt. God, that's fantastic. The love that you get whenever you get to let people see you. The transparency. I'd let them see inside and see that I'm just a human being, that I'm an alcoholic, and they're doing the best I can. This is it. You know, one of the guys that I sponsor told me the other day, he said, you know, when I asked you to be my sponsor, I thought you were sober long enough that you had these experiences to draw from and that you could tell me what to do, what's right and wrong. And he says, I see you don't know what the hell you're doing, but God's taking real good care of you. And I thought, man, that's it. That's what it's all about. To be able to come in here and ask this God, this loving God, to take care of me. It's just my business to ask Him to take care of me and His business to do it. And I don't like it because I'm not patient and I don't like authority and I don't like people to tell me what to do. But I'm so grateful for the training that I had in New Sobriety because I have to go right back to the same feelings, the same things that helped me stay sober in the very beginning are the same things that helped me stay sober today and allow me to walk out there on the sunny side of the street and be accounted for and just be me. To know that's all I ever wanted to be. To know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I got a relationship with this lady. She's my very best friend. She's my wife and my lover, and she's not my sponsor, and I'm grateful for that. But it's a fantastic feeling. And I got a relationship with that little girl. It's a fantastic relationship. I got to stand in the back of a room when I was new sober. A lot bigger than this, full of a lot more people. And I stood in the back of that room, and I was there because that little girl said, Daddy, what are you doing on Saturday? And I said, I don't know. I'll probably be talking to some alcoholics. And she said, how about coming down to this place? And I went down there, and I went in, and I didn't know anybody. And I watched her come walking out on the stage. Now, she was going to Alateen, and she'd gone down and enrolled in a modeling class, and she didn't tell anybody about it. It wouldn't make any difference. We were so busy working our own program, didn't make any difference anyway. But we stood there, and we looked each other in the eye. And what I saw when she come walking out on that stage was dignity and self-worth. And I wanted to cry out to those people, if you only knew where we come from. If you only knew the kind of animals we'd been, if you only knew where we come from. But I couldn't cry out that way because, you see, I couldn't take one bit of credit for that. Because doing the best I could, I just been hanging on around here one day at a time. But I got to stand in the back of that room and let them big daddy tears come down because she was my baby and I'm her daddy. God, I'm grateful for that. And I got to put my arms around my old man, tell him I love him. Man, it's my old man, and that's all I ever wanted out of you, just that. And that day when that lady reached over and put her hand on my leg when we was coming out of Canada in early sobriety, I had a special feeling too. A special feeling that me and her are going to finish this tower out together. Because she's all I ever wanted. Now we do that one day at a time, and that doesn't impress her because she gets into tomorrow, but I know one day at a time. We're doing the best we can. But I've had that special feeling. And when she started going through that change of life, I went to my sponsor and I said, I don't deserve this. I mean, I'm sober and she's nuts. She's throwing all that stuff right back in my lap. And my sponsor says, you just pray you don't commit adultery. That's the best you can do. And you get over there and put your arms around her and tell her you love her. Because you're going to get to experience a new kind of love for a lady that you never experienced before. And he said, besides that, you owe an amends to her. It'll probably take the rest of your life to make it. And that's your debt to pay. And you get over there and you tell her you love her. And I went over and I told her, I said, baby, I don't know what's happening to you, but I love you. And I'm going to stick it out. And I followed my sponsor's directions. And I've been able to have a special relationship with that lady. And I know there's a special kind of love that goes with the change of life. It's a new beginning and a new kind of love. Tomorrow we've been married 23 years. I think we'll probably make it to tomorrow. See, because we're right here. You know, it's a fantastic feeling. It's a fantastic experience. I heard a story about a little cobbler man, and I'm going to shut up. I'm going to tell it because it explains the whole thing about my God and my life. Little cobbler man was a good cobbler man, and he lived all his life and tended to business. He did what he had to do. He died and he went to heaven, and he was standing in front of God, and God said, "Cobbler man, you're a good man. You're a beautiful man. You did all the things you're supposed to do. But all your life, you lived down there on earth, and you never really believed in God, 100%. And the cobbler man said, "God, you know, if I could have just seen you one time, just one time, or if I could have heard your voice just once, if I could have heard your voice just once, or if I could have touched you just once, I would have believed." And God said, "I want to tell you something, cobbler man. You remember one day when you were in your shop and it was snowy and it was cold outside, a little girl came up to your door and she was crying and she was cold, and you let her into your shop and you set her down on a little chair there and you took her shoes off and you patched the holes in her shoes and you warmed her up and she sat there and you went back to work and you were working there for a while, and pretty soon you heard a little sound and you turned over there and the little girl got up and she was going to the door, and just when she got to the door she stopped and turned around and she smiled." And the cobbler man told God, "Yeah, I remember that." And God said, "You remember one day you were sitting in your shop and it was about noon and no bum come walking up and he came in and he asked you if you could have some money so that you might be able to get something to eat, and you said, yeah. You didn't have no money, but you had a couple of sandwiches, and you sat down there on the bench in your shop and you gave him one of your sandwiches, and you sat there and you ate your sandwich and he ate his sandwich, and when he got through eating, while you got up and went back to work, just as you turned, while he reached over and he shook your hand." And the cobbler man told God, "Yeah, I remember that." And God said, "Well, you remember one day whenever you were working in your shop, a little old lady come walking down the street, and she was all lost. She didn't know where she was. She was all disoriented, and you let her in your shop, and you set her down, and you got her calmed down and found out her son was up the street, and you went up and got her son and brought her son back down here, and she was happy. And as she walked out, she said, 'Bless you, my son.'" And the cobbler man told God, "Yeah, I remember that." God said, "Well, the little girl's smile was my smile, and that bum's handshake was my touch, and that little old lady's 'Bless you, my son' was my voice. I was there all the time. You just couldn't see, you couldn't hear, and you couldn't feel." You know, if I want to believe when my little girl smiled at me that day standing in the back of that room, if I want to believe that's my God's smile, I can. And if I want to believe when my old man puts his arms around me and him, say, "I love you," if I want to believe that's my God's touch, I can. And if I want to believe whenever my wife leans over and whispers in my ear and says, "Baby, I love you, you mean something to me," that's my God talking to me, I can believe that. Now, you can say that's not right, but you can't say I'm wrong, because I'm sober and I feel good about me. I feel good about me. I feel good about me because I can stand right here, right now, and look you in the eye. And I'm going to tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you're the greatest of them all. Because you let a stumble bum like me come walking in. And you loved me when I was unlovable. You put your arms around a guy like me and you held on to me. And you held me close. And you told me to keep coming back. That someday I'd get to know the magic of this program. Today I know that magic. It's here right now. If there's anything that I got control over, it's this second, right now, this heartbeat. And I got it because I can feel it. I can stand right here and look you in the eye and say beyond a shadow of a doubt, you're the greatest of them all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. We'd like to give you a token of our appreciation. I think you'll all agree that we've had a special blessing this morning by having this couple here from California. Before we say the Lord's Prayer, I'd like to just say this, that I am really very, very grateful to have been asked to be part of this, and especially because I was able to be part of, being with my special friends from California, and they came here to share with us, and I think they're home folks, and I think you can tell that. So I want to say my happy birthdays to 25 years in Brownwood, and I want to say again thanks for letting me be part of it. So in a moment, thank you. Yeah, let's applaud ourselves. Yeah, all right. Yeah, why not? And now, after a moment's meditation, I would like to ask Tracy to lead us in the Lord's Prayer.